The rooster crowed, and morning light crept into the small backyard of the Jason household. Mandy opened her eyes before the sun had fully risen. Her body ached from the cold floor where she slept beside the wooden kitchen door. It had become her usual place ever since her stepmother sent her out of the room meant for real daughters. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes, then tied a faded scarf around her hair. Without being told, she carried the broom and started sweeping the big compound. Dry leaves, sand, and wrappers from the previous days gathering littered the ground. As she swept, her bare feet became dusty, but she didn't complain. She had learned not to. Complaints only brought more trouble. Mandy was a beautiful girl. Her skin was dark like polished ebony, and her eyes were round and calm like a morning stream. But beauty did not matter in the house she lived in. It was a curse. Her stepmother Ruth hated her, not because she had done anything wrong, but simply because she existed. Mandy was born to Jason's first wife, who died giving birth to her. That was the day her suffering began. Mr. Jason remarried 2 years after. Ruth came into the house like a gentle woman, but once she took control, she poisoned the heart of her husband. "That girl," she often said, "is not normal. She brings bad luck." And Jason, who once loved his daughter, began to treat her like a stranger. Her elder sisters, Bella and Queen, followed their mother's footsteps. Though they had enough, they were jealous of Mandy's quiet beauty. They mocked her, dressed her in rags, and made her their maid. There were paid workers in the house, well-fed, well-dressed maids. But Mandy, the real daughter of the house, washed the clothes, scrubbed the floors, and cooked the meals. She was not allowed to eat with them. Most days, she went to bed with an empty stomach, her belly aching in silence. "Why do they hate me?" she once asked herself, tears wetting her pillow, a pillow that was nothing more than folded clothes wrapped in a sack. In the morning, she ironed her sisters' school uniforms. In the afternoon, she washed their clothes. In the evening, she cooked their food. And in between all these, she cleaned the compound, fetched water, and made sure everything was in place. No one said thank you. No one noticed her. One Sunday morning, while everyone else went for church in fine clothes and cars, Mandy stayed behind to boil water and prepare lunch. After cooking, she carried a bucket to the village stream to fetch water. That was when she saw him. He sat under the big tree beside the road. His hair was scattered. His clothes were torn. His face was dirty, and his eyes looked wild. Children ran past him and screamed, "Madman! Madman!" But Mandy stopped and looked at him. Something about his eyes caught her attention, not madness, but sadness. She reached into her wrapper and brought out a small piece of bread she had kept from the kitchen scraps. "You must be hungry," she said softly. The man didn't speak. He just looked at her and took the bread from her hand. He nodded slowly. Mandy gave him a faint smile and walked away. She didn't know that the so-called madman watched her long after she left. She didn't know her life was about to change. She had just fed a billionaire in disguise. Daniel sat quietly under the tree, chewing the small piece of bread the girl had given him. It was dry and old, but it tasted better than any meal he had eaten in weeks. Not because of the bread, but because of the kindness. He watched her walk away, her faded wrapper tied tightly around her small waist. Her slippers were worn out, and her shoulders slumped from exhaustion. But her heart was something Daniel had not seen in a long time. He closed his eyes and sighed. This was what he came looking for. Daniel was not mad. Far from it. He was a billionaire, born into wealth, power, and name. His father, Mr. Dominic, owned companies across the country. Their mansion had marble floors and golden stair rails. Cars filled their garage. Everything money could buy was in Daniel's reach. But he lacked one thing, true love. All his life, women came smiling. They laughed at his jokes, called him sweet names, promised him forever. But deep in their hearts, they were only after one thing, his money. He once fell in love with a woman named Pamela. She was beautiful, charming, and full of sweet words. Daniel gave her his heart. He trusted her. She almost destroyed him. She secretly sold company shares, tried to transfer lands into her name, and nearly framed him for fraud. If not for his friend who discovered it in time, Daniel would have lost everything. After that, he locked his heart. He stopped trusting. He stopped loving. One evening, he sat with his parents in the living room. "I have made a decision," he said. His mother looked up from her knitting. "What is it, my son?" "I want to leave the city for a while," he said. "I want to go where nobody knows me." His father frowned. "For what purpose?" "I want to find someone who will love me for who I am," Daniel said. "Not for my name." Not for my money. I want real love. I will disguise myself. I will dress like a madman and walk the streets. If someone can love me in that state, then I will know she truly loves me." His mother dropped her knitting. "Are you out of your mind? You can't do that," his father barked. "What if something happens to you?" But Daniel had already made up his mind. He prepared his journey in secret. He dressed in old clothes, left his phones behind, and took only a small bag. He looked into the mirror before leaving. His reflection was almost unrecognizable. Rough hair, dirty face, torn clothes. He had become someone else. And so, Daniel arrived in a quiet village. He chose it because no one there knew him. He slept by the roadside. He bathed in the stream. He begged for food. But everyone either ignored him or insulted him. Until Mandy. She didn't know who he was. She had nothing to give, but she gave. She didn't laugh like the others. She didn't call him names. She saw a stranger in need and offered help. And that moved Daniel. For days, he watched her from a distance. He saw how she was treated like a maid in her own house. He saw her sweeping, washing, and cooking while others laughed and enjoyed themselves. He followed her silently. He saw her cry in the backyard one night after being slapped. He watched her eat leftovers with her hands, sitting by the back door. And yet she never shouted. She never cursed anyone. She only cried quietly and wiped her tears. Daniel felt something shift in his heart. He had found her. But he wanted to be sure. The day was hot. The sun burned high over the village rooftops. Mandy sat outside on a small wooden bench, peeling cassava with her bare hands. Her fingers were sore, but she continued. She had learned not to stop. In that house, stopping meant punishment. From the window, her stepmother Ruth watched her with a smile. Not a kind one, but the kind that grew from power. She liked seeing Mandy work like that. It gave her pleasure. Inside, Bella and Queen laughed over something on their phones. Their room had a fan, cold drinks, and sweet-smelling perfumes. No one remembered that Mandy was their sister. She was simply the help. Then the compound gate creaked. It was rare for strangers to walk in without being invited. But that morning, Daniel walked in slowly, his shirt torn, his slippers broken, his hair still rough. He looked like trouble. He looked like someone people should drive away. The gateman rushed toward him, confused. "Who are you looking for?" he asked. Daniel raised one hand. "I mean no harm," he said. "I came to speak with the head of the house." Ruth, curious, stepped out. "You?" she scoffed, placing her hands on her waist. "You want to speak with my husband? Do you know where you are?" Daniel bowed his head slightly. "Please, madam. I have a request." Mandy stood from her bench, her heart beating fast. She knew that voice. It was the man she had helped by the roadside. What was he doing here? Mr. Jason came out soon after. His eyes narrowed at the sight of Daniel. "Who are you?" "My name is Daniel," he said softly. "I'm not from here. But I've seen something in this house I desire." Jason raised a brow. "You've lost your mind." "I want to marry one of your daughters," Daniel said quietly. A deep silence fell over the compound. Then suddenly, Ruth burst into laughter. Loud and long. "You? Marry which of my daughters?" she said between laughs. "Look at yourself. Are you not ashamed?" Daniel stood still. His eyes never shifted. Bella and Queen came out of the house, wondering what was going on. When they saw Daniel, they shrieked. "Mummy, this one says he wants to marry me?" Queen laughed. "I beg, don't insult me," Bella added. Jason shook his head in disgust. "You walk into my house looking like that and say you want to marry my daughters? Please leave before I call the police." But Ruth, always full of wicked ideas, held her husband's arm. "Wait," she said. "Let him marry someone." He said daughter, not daughters. "Let him marry our maid." Mandy froze where she stood. Jason looked at Ruth in surprise. "Yes," she said again louder. "Let him marry Mandy. She's like a maid here. Let the madman marry the housemaid. They fit each other." Jason looked at Mandy. "Yes, yes," he said slowly. "She's not doing anything useful anyway." Bella clapped. "Perfect match." Queen laughed. "Mad and maid." Mandy's eyes filled with tears. "Papa, please." "Quiet," Jason barked. "You will marry him. A man is finally asking for your hand, and you dare complain?" Daniel looked at her with sorrow in his eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. He only watched her break in front of everyone. Mandy ran inside and cried. She cried harder than she had ever cried before. They were going to give her to a madman. And no one cared how she felt. Mandy sat on the cold floor of the backyard, her back resting against the wall, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. The moon was full, shining softly over the compound. Crickets chirped in the grass. The world felt quiet, but her heart was screaming. Tomorrow was her wedding day. Not to a man she loved. Not to someone who had ever spoken kind words to her. But to a man the whole village believed was mad. A man who came in torn clothes and wild hair. A man who never spoke unless spoken to. A man she once gave bread to by the roadside. It felt like a joke, but no one was laughing. It was real. Ruth had spent the whole day mocking her. "You should be thankful," she said as she forced Mandy to wash Bella's clothes. "No one ever thought you'd find a husband. You should kneel and thank me." Mandy kept quiet. Even the maids in the house began to call her Madman's wife. Some whispered behind her back. Others said it to her face. As the house became quiet that night, Mandy remained outside. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but the tears didn't stop. She thought about her real mother. What would she say if she were alive? Would she have let this happen? She thought about running away, but to where? She had no money, no friends, no family that truly cared. Suddenly, she heard footsteps. Light ones. She turned quickly. It was Daniel. He was standing near the mango tree at the edge of the compound. The moonlight touched his face gently, revealing something strange, sadness. He was looking at her, but not with madness. Not even with pride. Just pain. She stood slowly. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice low. "I know," he replied. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Did I offend you? I only gave you food that day. Why do you want to marry me now, when you know I have no choice?" Daniel looked at the ground. "I didn't come to hurt you." "Then let me go," she whispered, tears falling again. "I can't," he said quietly. "Not yet." Mandy shook her head slowly. "You are just like the rest. You came to take what little I have left, my heart." "No," he said, his voice firm now. "I came to give you something. But the time is not right." She looked at him, confused. "What are you talking about?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his dirty shirt pocket and pulled out something small, a necklace with a tiny gold locket. He stretched it out toward her. She didn't take it. "What is this?" she asked. "It belonged to my mother," he said softly. "She wore it every day until she died. She gave it to me before her last breath." She said, "Give this to the one who sees your heart before your wealth." Mandy stared at him. "I don't understand." "You will," he said gently. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows of the night. Mandy stood there for a long time, holding the necklace he had dropped in her hand. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know that the man she was being forced to marry was not mad at all, and that by this time tomorrow, the whole village would be shaking with shock. The morning sun rose gently, casting golden light across the rooftops of the village. Birds sang cheerfully in the trees, and the air was cool with the smell of dew. But inside Mandy's heart, there was no joy, no song, no peace. She sat quietly on the edge of her wooden bed, staring at the rough wedding gown placed beside her. It wasn't new. It had been Bella's rejected dress. The zip was broken, the lace torn slightly at the side, but her stepmother said it was good enough for a maid. In the corner of the room, a small mirror hung by a bent nail. Mandy looked at herself in it. Her eyes were red from crying. Her lips were dry. Her hands shook slightly as she reached for the hairbrush. "You better not waste time," Ruth's sharp voice echoed from outside. "People are already waiting at the church." Mandy didn't respond. She brushed her hair slowly, remembering all the weddings she had seen in movies and magazines. Brides laughing with their mothers, walking down the aisle with fathers who smiled proudly. Brides kissed on the forehead and called precious. Brides wearing new dresses and walking into love. But for her, it was different. No one kissed her forehead. No one smiled at her. Her father didn't come to check on her. He was too busy drinking palm wine with visitors and bragging that one of his daughters had finally found a husband. As she stepped out of the house, the villagers turned to look. Some whispered. Some laughed. "That's her," one woman said. "The one marrying the madman." Another one added, "At least she's finally useful for something." Mandy kept her eyes on the ground. Daniel stood at the front of the small village church, dressed in the same old clothes. His beard was rough, and his shoes were dusty. He looked completely mad. Yet his eyes remained calm. Steady. The pastor looked confused but said nothing. He had been paid already by Mr. Jason. Inside the church, people filled the pews. Not because they were excited, but because they were curious. Who marries a madman in this day and age? Mandy stood beside Daniel, her hands trembling as the pastor began. "We are gathered here today." She didn't hear the rest. Her mind was far away. To join this man and woman in holy matrimony. She wanted to run, but her legs refused. "Do you, Mandy, take this man?" She said nothing. Ruth's voice rang from behind. "Answer, you foolish girl." Mandy closed her eyes. "I do," she whispered. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for, the unveiling. Daniel was told to remove the cloth tied around his head. Slowly he obeyed. Then he dipped his hand into his pocket and brought out a clean white handkerchief. He wiped his face, revealing smooth, neat skin beneath the dirt. He pulled off his shirt, revealing a well-ironed white shirt underneath. Gasps filled the room. He ran his fingers through his hair and removed the rough wig. Underneath it was a neat, trimmed haircut. The whispers turned into noise. "That's not a madman. He's not mad at all." Then he stepped forward, stood tall, and pulled out a letter from his breast pocket. He gave it to Mandy with both hands. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. It read, "I came to find love, not pity, not fear, not pride. And I found it in you. Thank you for giving me bread when you had nothing. Forgive me for the pain I caused to find your truth." The room fell silent. Mandy looked at him with wide eyes. He wasn't mad. He was a billionaire. Silence held the church like a spell. The man they had mocked, the one they had laughed at, the one they called mad, stood before them now, clean and radiant like someone from a dream. His posture was calm, but his presence filled the room with power. Mandy's hands trembled as she held the letter. Her eyes shifted slowly from the paper to Daniel's face. He was no longer in disguise. He stood tall and proud, looking into her eyes, not with madness, but with quiet honor. She turned, searching the crowd. Her stepmother Ruth sat frozen, her mouth wide open. Bella's fan dropped from her hand. Queen covered her face in shame. Mr. Jason looked like he wanted to disappear. His proud shoulders had fallen. His lips could not move. The same man they had mocked, the one they had thrown their maid at, was now the same man their village would talk about for years. Daniel took the microphone from the pastor gently. The pastor stepped back, confused and afraid, unsure what would come next. Daniel cleared his throat. "I know many of you do not understand," he began, his voice deep but soft. "Some of you came today to witness a joke. Others came to laugh. But I came for something different. I came looking for love, real love." He turned to Mandy. "I disguised myself because I've been hurt so many times. Women loved my name, my cars, my money. They smiled with their lips, but not with their hearts. So I left it all behind, dressed like a madman, and walked the streets. And in this village, I found her." He paused, looking at her with eyes that held no mockery, only deep truth. "She saw me. Not my clothes. Not my smell. Not my silence. She saw a human being. And when no one else offered me a thing, she gave me her bread. That was the moment I knew." The church remained quiet. Then Daniel looked out at the people sitting and standing in shame. "And to the family that gave her to me like garbage, I say thank you. You didn't know what you were giving away." His eyes turned to Ruth. "You pushed her forward thinking you were playing a cruel joke. But in doing so, you honored her beyond your understanding. Because today she is my wife." Mandy's breath caught in her chest. Wife. He still wanted her. After everything. Ruth stood up suddenly. "Please, sir, we didn't know. We thought you were, you know." She couldn't even finish her words. Her voice shook. Bella and Queen knelt immediately. "We're sorry," they said, tears filling their eyes. "Please forgive us. We were only joking." Mr. Jason stood, but couldn't meet Daniel's eyes. I didn't know she would matter to anyone." Daniel looked at them one by one. Then he looked at Mandy. "You don't have to come with me," he said. "If you choose to walk away, I will understand. You were forced here. But I am giving you the power now. You get to decide." Mandy blinked. Her lips parted. She looked around. The same family who never gave her a voice, now waiting to hear what she would say. Slowly, she turned to Daniel. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled. Not because she was told to, but because her heart was finally speaking. The church was still. The air hung heavy with emotion. Eyes were wide, mouths slightly open, but no one dared speak. They waited. All eyes were on Mandy, the girl they had mocked, the maid they had hidden when guests came, the girl they pushed forward to marry a man they thought was mad. But now, she stood like royalty in a borrowed gown, facing a man who had just placed the whole world in her hands. Daniel's words echoed again in her mind. You don't have to come with me. The choice is yours now. Mandy looked down at the gold locket still clutched in her hand, the one he gave her behind the compound the night before. Her fingers traced it slowly. It was warm, almost as if it carried the beating of his heart. She looked up at him. I was never a daughter in my father's house, she began, her voice soft yet firm. I grew up under harsh words and silent tears. I was never good enough. I was never invited to sit. I was never told, well done. She turned slightly toward the crowd, her voice growing steady. When you gave me to this man, you didn't ask what I wanted. You didn't ask if I was ready. You just handed me over because you believed he was mad. Because you believed that was the only kind of man I deserved. Ruth wiped her eyes with her wrapper. Jason bowed his head. But this man, Mandy continued, her eyes back on Daniel. This man gave me something none of you ever gave me. The room held its breath. He gave me a choice. Tears slipped down her cheek. Not from pain this time, but from the beauty of being seen. I don't know much about wealth, she said. I've never worn new clothes. I've never had breakfast without fear. I've never even had a birthday cake. But what I do know is how to love. She took a step closer. And if you still want me, not because I cooked for you or cried beside your tree, but because you believe in who I am inside, then yes, I will go with you. Daniel smiled. He didn't move. He didn't speak. But something in his eyes shone, something deep, something rare. The pastor, still holding his Bible with trembling hands, finally broke the silence. Well then, he said gently, by the power given to me by God and this congregation, I now pronounce you husband and wife. There were no cheers. No loud claps. Just silence. The kind that comes when people are too shocked to react. Ruth fell to her knees. Mandy, forgive me. Please. I didn't know. Bella and Queen joined her. Sister, please, we were wrong. We were foolish. Forgive us. But Mandy only looked at them. No hatred in her eyes. No pride. Just quiet strength. Daniel stepped forward and gently took her hand. Together, they walked out of the church slowly. Not in a rush. Not with noise. Just side by side. Two people, once strangers, now joined in something deeper than anyone could understand. Outside, the sun was waiting. And for the first time in her life, Mandy stepped into it, not as a maid, but as a wife. They left the church quietly. No music played. No trumpets blew. But as Mandy and Daniel stepped out, the village watched in silence. People moved aside without being told. Some bowed their heads. Some simply stared, unable to believe what had just happened. Daniel opened the car door for Mandy. It wasn't the usual village car. It was sleek and black, with soft leather seats. A driver in suit stood waiting. For a moment, Mandy hesitated. She looked back at the building behind her, the church where everything changed. She looked back at the faces, the family that never loved her. Daniel gently touched her hand. Are you ready? She nodded slowly. The door closed behind her. The car drove off, leaving behind a cloud of dust, and a village filled with shame and wonder. Daniel's mansion was not far from the city. The compound was quiet, filled with flowers, fountains, and gentle light. As the car entered the gate, Mandy gasped softly. She had never seen anything like it in her life. A team of staff stood waiting, dressed in clean uniforms. They bowed deeply. Welcome home, sir, they said. And welcome, madam, one added, with a kind smile at Mandy. She looked around, unsure how to respond. Daniel led her into the house. The floor was smooth like glass. The air smelled of roses. Paintings hung on the walls. It was like stepping into another world. That night, after dinner, he called her to the garden. I want to show you something, he said, handing her an envelope. Mandy took it slowly. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. It was a letter, but it wasn't from Daniel. It was from his mother. She read, Dear Mandy, when Daniel first told us about his plan, I feared for him. I did not want my son walking the streets like a madman. But he said something I could not forget. Mother, I want to be seen. Not as a billionaire, but as a man with a heart. He found you. And from what I've heard, you did not just see him. You honored him. You gave him food, but more than that, you gave him kindness. You are welcome to this family, not because you are now married to a rich man, but because your heart is richer than gold. Tears filled Mandy's eyes. Daniel sat beside her. She wanted you to read that tonight, he said. She believed in you even before she met you. Mandy wiped her tears slowly. She had never received a letter like that before. Never been called valuable. Never been told she mattered. But now, Everything had changed. She looked at Daniel. "Can I write a letter too?" He smiled. "Of course." She stood, walked into the study, and returned minutes later. She placed the letter in his hand. "Please send this to my father," she whispered. Daniel nodded. Back in the village, days passed in silence. Mr. Jason sat in the sitting room, the same chair where he once ordered Mandy to clean the floor. His eyes were tired, his heart heavier than ever. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. He opened it slowly. "Dear Father, I have forgiven you, not because I have forgotten, but because I want peace. I found love, and I have found my worth. You may never understand how it feels to be treated like nothing in your own home. But I pray your heart remembers me one day, not as your maid, but as your daughter." Jason wept. But Mandy never returned. And that was the day they all truly understood what they had lost. The rain fell gently on the roof of the mansion. It wasn't heavy, just soft drops like heaven was whispering a quiet song. Inside the glass-walled living room, Mandy sat near the window in a soft cream gown, her hands resting on her lap. Her eyes looked out into the garden where roses bloomed freely, untouched by dust, untouched by pain. It had been 6 months since the wedding. 6 months of peace. 6 months of being seen, loved, and honored. She had not returned to the village. She didn't need to. Her husband, Daniel, had given her everything she was denied, not with wealth alone, but with care, respect, and gentleness. Then that morning, the gatekeeper came in quietly. "Madam," he said, bowing, "there are visitors. From your village." Mandy looked up slowly. Her heart did not race. Her face didn't change. "Let them in," she said softly. Moments later, the sitting room doors opened, and they entered. Her father, Mr. Jason, walked in first, his head bowed, his wrapper soaked with rain. Ruth followed behind, barefoot, her hands shaking, eyes swollen from crying. Bella and Queen came in last, holding each other, no longer proud, no longer laughing. Mandy said nothing. They knelt, all 4 of them, on the marble floor. "Mandy, our daughter," Jason began, his voice weak like a broken pipe. We have come to beg you. Please forgive us." Mandy watched them in silence. Ruth began to weep. "We didn't know your worth. We treated you like a nobody. We believed lies. We forgot you were a child, a human being with feelings. Mandy, please forgive me." Bella and Queen dropped their heads lower. "Sister, we are sorry. We mocked you. We were jealous of your quiet strength. But we see it now. We were blind." Tears rolled slowly down Mandy's face. Not because she hated them. Not even because she was angry. She was just full. Full of all the emotions she had buried for years. Full of the pain of all the nights she cried herself to sleep on the cold floor. Full of the memories of being slapped, insulted, ignored. She stood quietly. "You didn't want me when I had nothing," she said slowly. "You gave me away like rubbish, thinking you were getting rid of a burden. But what you didn't know is that I was your blessing in disguise." They nodded, still kneeling. Mandy looked at Ruth. "You took my mother's place and filled it with hate." She looked at Jason. "You were supposed to protect me." She turned to her sisters. "You wore new clothes, but I wore pain. You called me a maid. But now I own this house. I sit where you once refused to let me stand." They wept harder. Then she paused, and something gentle came into her eyes. "I forgive you," she said, her voice soft. "Not because you deserve it, but because I want to be free. I won't carry your sins anymore." They raised their heads slowly, their faces wet with tears. Thank you," Jason whispered. "But," Mandy said firmly, "forgiveness does not mean forgetting. You are not here because you love me. You are here because you saw my glory. And now you want a share of it." They said nothing. "I forgive you," she repeated. "But I choose my peace." She turned and walked out of the sitting room, not with anger, not with pride, but with grace. And as the rain continued outside, her family remained kneeling on the floor. Not just in apology, but in regret. Because they had finally seen her light. Only when it no longer needed their approval. Hello champions, I hoped you enjoyed our stories. Please hit the like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe to our channel. Thanks.